All right, we are live. Welcome to episode 74. I'm here with Toni Ronayne, the managing director of Little Caesars Pizza Canada. But aside from that, she has so many other projects on the go and so many other experiences that we're going to talk about tonight, and specifically talking about her background in retail and also food industries. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about how you can really strengthen your brand. And she's dealt with many brands, including Aritzia, Starbucks, Avita Canada, Tivana, Freshii, so many other roles that she's had senior leadership experience in. And I really hope that today's conversation helps you with your brand and how you can grow your brand into a massive empire like Toni has been able to for so many other brands. So Toni, thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me on the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Lyndon.
And for those watching, Toni is new actually to the Windsor Essex community. She moved here about a year ago.
Yeah, January 15th, 2021. So we're officially 1 year and some odd days in and never looking back. Like we're lifers at this point.
Good to hear. And since you're so new to the community, I have to ask, where in Windsor Essex has been your favorite place for coffee so far?
Ooh, that's a really tough one. So I would say in Amherstburg, I'm a big fan of Caffeine and Company, not just for the coffee, but obviously for all of the baked goods and the sandwiches and the soups and all of that. And then I would say in Windsor, Anchor Coffee House is incredible. I also happen to be gluten-free, so they have a lot of different things that are gluten-free and delicious. And I happened to kind of stumble upon that place when I was just in town for something else. So I continue to explore, but I'm a big coffee fan. And I've been so impressed with how many incredible independent businesses that we have in the Windsor Essex area. And, we definitely are not lacking for good coffee. That's for sure.
Yes, Richard even agrees with you. Anchor Coffee is awesome. Good to hear. All right, so Toni, you're fairly new into an awesome position, and I assume you like pizza because you're there. But you're at Little Caesars Pizza Canada as managing director, and I believe you started last June.
Yeah, it was June of 2021. So just shortly after we had moved to the area.
That's awesome. And what would you say, is this role a bit different than some of your past roles with Freshii, Tivana, Aritzia?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's entirely different. It's definitely a leadership role. It's the right kind of balance of strategy with execution. My background has been primarily operations based. So, my career really started working in retail at the store level in an hourly position, and then eventually grew my career into district and regional leadership, and then upwards into to VP roles. What I loved about this opportunity is a couple of things. So yes, I love pizza. I once considered myself a pizzatarian, so pizza is near and dear to my heart. And I grew up in Chicago, so I knew the Little Caesars brand, grew up with the company, and just really fell in love with the company and the values. And, in terms of the role itself, it's a little bit of a wider spread. So I'm not just overseeing operations or franchise development, but I really have the opportunity to support and lead kind of each facet of the franchise business for Canada. And so, it allows me to play in the sandbox with marketing and with franchising, as well as, working directly with franchisees. And I really fell in love with the franchise business when I worked with Freshii, because I had the opportunity to obviously sit in a corporate role and influence what was happening in terms of this decisions that were impacting the store, but then also having this incredible opportunity to work with entrepreneurs who invest their life savings into building these restaurants and growing a business. And so I felt like the role was really tapping into a lot of my strengths that I was able to acquire, over the last several years. And so it was really in my wheelhouse about the things that I'm passionate about doing, but also, enough of an appropriate challenge that now I'm going to oversee kind of the entire business and brand for the country. And so, yeah, it's been, I would say, an appropriate challenge.
And for any new job, there's this transition period. What does that transition period look like for you at Little Caesars Pizza Canada? Like, I guess, what have you really thrown yourself into? What do you, if you can share some things that you're working on or looking forward to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so, the first really 90 days was focused on onboarding. And we have a fantastic onboarding strategy. So, essentially every leader and executive leader within the organization works in the restaurants. And, for the first several weeks, I was making dough, making sauce, making pizzas, dressing pizzas, learning really all of the four-wall operations of the business. And it was completely eye-opening for me, because one of the things I hadn't realized until I started working at Little Caesars was just how high quality of a product that we really truly have. We are one of the only QSR pizza chains in Canada that makes their dough fresh every single day. And so, imagine that it's never frozen, you're blending it, you've got these massive machines, and the work to like really knead through the dough and make it. There's such a sense of pride about the ingredients. And I think that having that experience really instills the right level of knowledge and pride for the leadership within the company. So, I spent the first several weeks in stores. I was actually in the US in 2 different markets doing that training. And then after that, once I transitioned into my official role, we had a 90-day strategy that I put together to really learn what was happening in our business. And, in our business in Canada, we have franchisees that have been operating with us for 40 years. And so they have a ton of knowledge, an incredible amount of experience. And I wanted to get out on the road and spend as much time with those folks as I possibly could to really understand what was required at the leadership level for our business. So myself and then various members of our leadership team did a cross Canada tour. We went from West Coast to East Coast over the course of 2 weeks. We didn't get much sleep. There was lots of planes and traveling, but really just went and executed listening sessions across the country. And trying to find out what were the things that we really needed to start doing and stop doing and continue doing as a leadership team. So I felt like I got a master class in the business, in the operations, but then also in gathering all of the feedback and insights from that group, which then helped lay the framework for, the 2022 strategy that we set that we're now executing. And so it's been an incredible ride. I've only been there a short amount of time. I think I'm now 8 months, like moving into my 9th month in role. But I would say for anybody that's starting a new job, like really taking that approach to have an open door and learn from others and ask questions and be curious is really critical to not just your success, but your ability to impact success in the business. And so I would definitely encourage that. And then, I would say it's probably going to take me another couple of months to really continue to learn the business and the Little Caesars business and really to understand where I can add the best value moving forward in a sustainable way.
Well, first, it sounds like a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. Sounds like similar to Undercover Boss. I hope you didn't have to wear a wig or anything like that.
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I would have been more than happy to wear a wig and be Undercover Boss, but no, it was all on the up and up. They knew why I was there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it speaks to not being afraid to get your hands dirty, and especially if it is a corporate job or you're working in the office and experiencing what the day-to-day operations are like. That's an awesome story that you shared. And you mentioned it'll take about a year until you're fully transitioned. You have a full grasp of the company, and you've worked with several companies. What would you say the average is for somebody who's entering the corporate world or a new brand? Like, how long does it really take until your feet are fully in and you've been able to grasp everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that what I would say to that is it depends on the person and it depends on the company. I would say earlier on in my career, I've never been afraid of taking action or leading change. But I think what I've learned over the last couple of years or transitions is that it's really worth taking the time to get as much information as possible up front. And I think in order to have a good strategy, you've got to have the right people at the table. So, you could say it could take an average of 6 months for somebody to get up to speed. It could take an average of a year. There are studies that would say that, when you're in your second year of performance, that's usually like the peak of your time and role, because you've already mastered all of the basics and you're able to start adding your own signature to the work that you're doing. But I really think that it's dependent on the complexity of the person and the complexity of the role. So, my advice would be really, to take the time that you need in the beginning to learn as much as you can, because you're never going to get that time back. And, in our business and certainly in the restaurant industry, in a time like going through, a pandemic and, working with 350 plus stores across the country, really taking the time to learn is important, because you're always going to find yourself in a place where you're building the plane and flying it at the same time. Nothing is ever finished or complete. And, you're going to look around and see who's on your team, and they're going to support you. But it's critical that I think that you have an openness to learning and to adjusting as you go, and a mentality that, you're never really going to have everything figured out. So everyone's going to have to strike the right balance of when it's time to act, versus when it's time to adjust, versus when it's time to really sit back and observe. And so I think, it's important that you take the time to observe up front and then figure that out as you go.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And yeah, like you said, depends on the job, depends on how eager you are to learn about the role that you've just entered. And I feel like we could talk forever about this and other topics, because you have so many leadership experiences in your back pocket. But just backtracking a bit to your time at Freshii, where you were the vice president of global franchise development, can we, because we're focused on brand growth and strategy, what types of strategies did you use while you're the global franchise development officer to really enter new franchise territory? And was things like this difficult, accessing new types of markets?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important work. And I think that, what I would say about that is that it requires such a massive cross-functional lift in
Mhm.
order to launch a brand in a new market. So I think the first thing and the most critical thing, and in franchise development, the number one thing you are focused on is making sure that you're bringing in the right talent for the organization. So in a franchise business, your talent is obviously going to be your internal team, so the people that are working for you corporately, but then you're also focused on, the talent that is going to be running the stores. And I have seen it in businesses and had many conversations with people that work within this industry and have worked for different companies. And I can't stress enough how important that is. And when you're looking to launch a brand in a different market internationally, the most important decision you're going to make is who are you going to partner with on that work. So, you're going to look for somebody that has the right level of experience, that has the right level of capital, that has the right ideas, that understands the market. And then kind of everything branches off from there. So once you've got the right group and you're working with the right franchisees, then you're focused on, okay, what are all of the things that we need to look at to launch this business? And it's like starting from square one. So, while you have a playbook of how something might work in Canada or in the US and North America, when you are dealing with international businesses, there are cultural elements that, are unaccounted for. So, at Freshii, as we looked internationally, we were looking at doing business in Peru, and most of our restaurants in Canada are grab and go. They're, quick service, fast casual. And this was all pre-pandemic, so even more so now. But in Peru, the culture is really to sit down with your family, to have a meal. They're not really going to be as interested in having packaging that's ready to go. They want to sit down and have actual dishes. And so, as you think about the menu architecture or the store operations or how you're going to market your brand or what you're going to call your brand, sometimes it doesn't even translate correctly. That really requires both your subject matter experts internally as well as that feedback from that local franchisee that's going to help you to build that strategy. So, from what real estate looks like to how labor is different in, Latin American countries versus European countries, building out that actual P&L and that business model is so important. And it requires that ground level knowledge as well as the right team. And so, we always talked about the 80-20 rule. So 80% of what we do in North America is probably going to apply, and so it's a matter of that 20% and being able to customize to that market through the products that you're serving or the messaging or what the store looks like, how it feels. All of those aspects are really, really critical. And what we found was that when we applied that 80-20 rule, all of a sudden we had all of this incredible innovation and all of these ideas that were globally coming at us. And we said, wow, like that was a fantastic menu item, or that was a great promotion, or, that marketing initiative really drove traffic to our restaurants in that part of the world. How can we take those learnings and then go ahead and apply them, to the global organization? So it's, I would say there's a ton of strategy. But again, it comes back to really working with the right folks and making sure that you have the right talent. When you don't have the right people at the table, you're probably not going to have the right information, and it can be really challenging to build and grow a business when you're having to check and adjust all the time.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, makes sense. And I think you mentioned being able to customize your product as a franchise to the markets that you're looking to tap into. Is that always the case for franchises? Like McDonald's, I know there's McDonald's in China, Japan, like they've really tailored their items to those specific markets. As a new company, should that be the case, or should one, like, is it are they able to understand like this isn't a market for me and not to enter it, or is it a bit different in the food industry?
Well, I think that I think it depends. So, I would say that the best and most successful gold standard franchise businesses are going to allow a local market to influence the products that they're going to offer. And I think that that's important. On the flip side, I think that when you're launching a new business, it's really important to understand what type of impact you're going to have. What type of problem are you trying to solve? What is the thing that is going to attract consumers to your business, and how are you going to, create emotional connections with your customers? That's how you're going to ensure that people are going to return to you time and time again, is that you're solving a problem, you're connecting with people, you're establishing a need for something. So yeah, I would say that the companies that do that really well internationally, definitely are customizing their product or their offering in order to be relevant. And I think that, you can look at many business studies where that wasn't the case. And, it's kind of, it's as simple as evolve or die, right? So, how are you going to evolve your business and your brand in order to attract new customers? And in many ways, when you go into international business or expanding your brand, you're not the first player in town, and so you've got to really pay attention to what your competition is doing and figure out, strategically, okay, how does this playbook differ, when we're going into Chile, or how does this playbook differ, when we recognize that, while we might be the most popular pizza brand in this country, people aren't even really eating pizza. And so we actually need to not only just launch a pizza company, but we also need to educate them about why people should eat pizza in the first place. And so you have to consider all of those things. And I think part of that is making sure that you're doing the right level of market research and gathering that level of information in order to then build the right strategy.
Mm-hmm. And just touching on that point with, like you said, you're not always the only player in the market. With Little Caesars being a massive pizza franchise, how as a brand is Little Caesars really differentiate themselves between Domino's and all those other companies? Because I think your experience with that would really help some other brands that are trying to start out little mom and pop shops or small companies that are looking to grow big, because there's competition that they face as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many ways I think that we differentiate ourselves. Our company is all about family fun and pizza. And we are a family run business. And you can feel that. Like I said, we have franchisees that have been operating in Canada with us for 40 years that we were the first international market for Little Caesars. And so Canada is incredibly near and dear to the Illich family, as well as to the Little Caesars family. One of our biggest differentiators is our hot and ready concept. And I'm sure you're familiar with it, but this idea that you can literally walk into a pizza restaurant, get a fresh pizza the way that you want it, within 30 seconds or less is pretty incredible. And it's something that none of our competitors are able to do or have been able to figure out. And then we now have a program which is called Reserve and Ready. And that is all about, customizing your pizza the way that you would like it with your ingredients. And again, it's 5 minutes or less. You just order it on the app exactly the way that you want it. You go there. It's in our pizza portals. You don't even have to have any sort of face-to-face interaction if you're feeling a bit, hesitant, given kind of the scope of the world with COVID. I think that those two types of programs are really a point of difference for us, being able to connect with our consumers and really play up the convenience play. We are definitely the most convenient pizza brand in the world. In addition to that, I spoke about it earlier, but the quality of our ingredients, the fact that we make our dough every day. A lot of our competitors, they're serving frozen dough, they serve frozen cheese, and you might not realize that. So, that is definitely a point of difference for us. And then we are also the value player. So, not only do we have this high quality product, but it's at a price that's really affordable for everybody. Our founder, Mike Illich, he had a vision that everybody was entitled to pizza night. And that really drove the heart of the decision-making in our business around price. Everybody had $5. And so, with $5, you could feed a family, and today, I mean, we serve our classic pizza at $6.99 across Canada. And that is, for a classic
with inflation, right?
With inflation, right? And have not compromised the quality of our product or the ingredients that we're serving. So it's something that is very, very important to us, that we are accessible for families. We're accessible for all, that everybody can enjoy pizza night. And I think those values and those commitments that we've made to our customers and to our franchisees, really are the architecture of our values, which I think is what sets us apart.
So before we wrap up, because you're making me hungry already, I just have two quick questions for you. The first being, should a young business entrepreneur, if they're looking at starting a company, but they see that there's so many other companies similar to theirs in that same market, should they be turned off by that, or do you think they should be looking at it differently?
Oh, I love that question. I don't think they should be turned off by that. I mean, I would say that, where there is competition, there is a customer that is purchasing and is interested in that type of product. And so, quite often when we would look at franchise development, you might look and say, who's already operating in the market? And seeing that somebody's already there is not a bad thing. It tells you that the customer is there and they're interested and they are willing. What I would say to that is, what's going to be your point of difference? How are you going to ensure that what you have is bigger, is better, is brighter? And I think that comes back to this idea of, what problem are you trying to solve? What type of impact are you looking to have? If you're looking to, if our mission was just to sell as many pizzas as we possibly could, I don't know that we would have the same impact as we do, given our intention of really, helping families to have, pizza night every night. And and, making sure that we have the highest quality ingredients and at an affordable price. So I think that, the intentions that you have for whatever it is that you're going to do is really critical. And then making sure that you have a locked and loaded business strategy that is going to help you to have the impact that is required. So, I think that's really important, I would say, especially if you're looking to go into a market where somebody already exists. And it's probably not all that different if you're launching something brand new. It would probably be the same situation. So yeah, that would be my response to that one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome response and a really good way to look at it. Before I let you go, because I know you're extremely busy, could you share some final advice with young students, entrepreneurs that are looking to really grow their brand from scratch? They have nothing. What would be the first thing you tell them?
Yeah. So definitely, what I would say is, don't wait to start something. I think that especially for young entrepreneurs, there can be this expectation on yourself that you need more experience, or you need to learn more, or you need to have all of your T's crossed and your I's dotted before you launch. And that is just not the case. I think that what we're going to see coming out of this pandemic is a continuation of this acceleration of, the entrepreneurial spirit. We know that millionaires and billionaires are made during recessions and tough times. And that is something that we are going to see. And I think those that are going to act and start executing are the ones that are going to realize that early success. So I think time is critical. And, you're not, you don't have to have a full 5, 7, 10-year business plan built out on day one. But you do need to take the time, like I said, to do the right level of research and understand what are the problems you're trying to solve, who needs to be on your team, and doing kind of some baseline early strategic stuff in order to get off the ground. So I would say, get prepared to fly the plane while you're building the plan. But then also, make sure that you've got the right team around you, and that you're not allowing your own ego to get in the way of your success. You don't need to be a subject matter expert on the product that you're trying to sell or what the business is that you're trying to create, but you do need a group of subject matter experts around you. So building diversity within your team, making sure that you have people that can challenge your ideas. Don't surround yourself with a bunch of yes people that are going to tell you you're doing a great job. You need people that are really going to challenge you and stretch you, and help you to think differently outside of yourself, because you already know your own perspective. You need to get some other perspective. So definitely having the right team. And then really having clarity around what your role is going to be in the business. There are so many people that have incredible ideas, that are great entrepreneurs, that really are not skilled in leading and leading people and running a business. That's just not what they're, what wakes them up at night and gets them fired up. It's not their skill set. So really understanding where your strengths are and where your own opportunities are, and then defining what's your role going to be within this company. I think it's just as important to know what your role is on day one as it is to know when it's time to transition into something else. So I think really having some personal reflection and taking the time to do some introspective thinking, get some real feedback, and be open to learning throughout the process. And I think, those are things that I've really done at every stage in my career and continue to do so. I definitely hate being the smartest person in the room. It doesn't happen very often. I don't enjoy that. I make a point of ensuring that I'm not the smartest person in the room, because I think when we're learning, then, our strengths are going to be on the stage, and they're really going to help you to create something incredible and probably beyond what your initial idea was in the first place. So
if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right.
That's awesome. No, I mean, that advice was amazing. I think even, the business schools and in Windsor would really benefit from having you speak and just talk about your experience. So I'll definitely be connecting with you on that. But for those watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out Toni's website. It's, I believe, ToniRonayne.com.
.com. Yep.
.com. And I believe you're an author.
I am. Yeah. Yes, I am an author. I had an incredible opportunity to work on a co-authored book project with 19 other women. And, this was, is not a business story, but really more about just, my personal journey of motherhood. And, we said it earlier, Lyndon, but I mean, I think that the hardest thing I've ever done, business is easy. Like I get business. I love business. I built a career around that. Becoming a parent and being a mother, it's definitely the hardest job and the hardest thing I've ever done. So, but also the most rewarding. And so I had the opportunity to be a part of this book called Life, Love, Lemonade. And it's written by myself and 19 other women. And, I loved the process and being able to write this book, and I would say it's a great example of like, I didn't, you don't wait to write a book until you're, a perfect author. I mean, nobody's ever a perfect author. So,
yeah.
But it was more about being able to share some personal stories and have that personal learning experience for myself. So, yes, please do check it out. It is available on the website. It's on Amazon. You can get it where most books are sold.
Cool. I will be buying it. And Toni, you do have to sign my copy. That's the only.
I'll get you a copy, Lyndon. You don't have to buy the book. I'll definitely help you with that.
Awesome. There you have it, everyone. Toni Ronayne. I mean, we could talk forever about her amazing career and all she's doing to inspire young entrepreneurs, women, and anyone looking to grow their business. Toni, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much.